Welcome to MilSpouse Matters, the podcast dedicated to encouraging military spouses. Need some inspiration as you navigate military life, moves, deployments, raising military kids, keeping your marriage together, career issues, and more? Get an encouraging, humorous outlook from a spouse who's been there for 30 years. Join host Jen McDonald, author of You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, who knows that we're stronger together. Jen also writes regularly for outlets such as Military Spouse Magazine and has been featured in numerous books and national publications. Grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and sit back and relax as Jen talks with military spouses both new and experienced who will give you realistic hope and support for your own MilSpouse journey.
Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the MilSpouse Matters podcast. I'm so thankful that you're joining me today. This is Jen, and I just want to say Happy New Year. It's 2020, and this is our first episode of the year. I have been gone for a little bit, and if you're really curious about what's been going on, it's been a little crazy, just a bunch of life stuff. I did a little update on the MilSpouse Matters Instagram, so take a look there. Also, we did a giveaway at the end of the year of several copies of my book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse. So if you've been watching the news at all lately, or you may be affected by this, you know that there are a lot of troops that just went out on a deployment, or sent overseas. And as I'm talking about this, I hear a plane flying overhead because we're near an Air Force base. And so I know that the things that are happening on the news aren't just hypothetical to our community. And if you don't know anything about me, my husband was in for 31 years, active duty, retired a couple of years ago, and I have been a writer and podcaster for this community for a long time. And I do a lot of work with places like Military Spouse, writing for the military spouse community. We do a lot of resources through my job at Military by Owner. I'm the content editor there. And I'm really proud of the fact that we produce a lot of resources for military families to support you in PCS moves in other areas. And my son is active duty as well. So I'm right there with you. So I know things seem a little uncertain right now for many of us. And I just want you to know you're in my thoughts. And also, I think I'm just going to do a giveaway of my book for Kindle only. I'm going to try to give away at least 20 copies. So here's what we're going to do for that. I will probably either put it in my story on Instagram, or if you want a copy, send me an email at milspousematterspodcast@gmail.com. Send me a Facebook message or an Instagram message. They're both at MilSpouse Matters. And I'm going to get you connected. If you are looking for some extra support, I would like to give you a free copy of my book on Kindle. Also on my site, it's jen-mcdonald.com or milspousematters.com. They both point to the same place. You can find a free deployment devotional. That's a 5-day devotional. You can just download and start it right away. I have a lot of articles about deployment and military families. And take a look at the show archives. You can do that on the tab there, or you can just go on iTunes or whatever podcast player you're using. I have a lot of content about military family support during this time. So there's episode 24 is talking about a resource for your kids when their parent is deployed. Episode 23 with Judy Davis, we talked about different ways to support our kids during this time. Episode 22 is one of my favorites. They're all my favorites, but episode 22 really hit home for me because I am the parent of a military member, and it is a bit different. And that is with Elaine Bry, and we're talking about when your child joins the military. And also, if you're a military parent, or if you want to help out your parents or in-laws, get her book, Be Safe, Love Mom, and also point them to that episode. There's another one, episode 19 with Liz Ann Lightfoot, about keeping your military marriage strong during deployment. And episode 18, Help, My Spouse is Deploying and I Just Moved Here. So if you're in that boat, and actually it's a lot of good resources just if you are dealing with a deployment. So take a look at the past shows. Again, on my site, I offer a lot of content to support you. And I think the next episode will be talking about other resources for when your spouse goes to war or a sudden deployment. And I'm going to connect you with some other resources. But these are just kind of things off the top of my head, as this is very, very much on my mind right now. Just a reminder, if you like the show, it does so much for me if you subscribe and leave a 5-star review on whatever app you're using. And it helps it get in front of more people. And if you like a topic or a specific episode, please send it to others and share it with them. If you're looking for a topic I haven't covered, let me know. I am always looking for new ideas. And I would say that I don't want to take too long in this intro, but I've been thinking about this a lot. It's the new year and you kind of start to mull around just what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I've had different opportunities come up. We've had a lot of downloads and more than I ever expected. And it just tells me that I'm on the right track. But I just want to reiterate to you why I'm doing this. It's to provide positive support for you as a military spouse, families around the world with the unique challenges that we face, because it is different. I know what military life is like, and I know the common pitfalls and challenges. I don't know everything, but I'm hoping to point you towards resources and people that can help. Military life is hard, and we all need a helping hand and real talk. I'm not doing this as a side hustle. It's not that there's anything wrong with that, but that was not the reason that I started this. It really was just to continue giving back to this community and offering help. I will not bring on people to help my numbers or because of what they might offer me, like business wise or whatever. It has to be helpful to you. I have cut shows after the fact, after I've recorded them, and I am pretty picky about who I bring on. So I just say all that to let you know this is for you, the listener. It is not about branding or trying to sell ads or any of those things. And again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that was never my motivation. My motivation has always just been for you, to help you and support you in this life that can be really hard. I want to acknowledge the hardships and also help you find positive solutions and a way forward, because at the end of the day, that's what we have to do, is figure out a way to keep going and keep our families going. So before I get too emotional, I just wanted to mention that to you guys. So today's show, I'm really excited to bring to you. This is one of two parts, a chat with Terri Laurent, and we talk about finding a mentor, being a mentor, and what that looks like, and why do we need mentors? So in this day and age, there's lots of noise, and you may not have anybody in person that you can really ask questions or look up to. So we're talking about how to find those people in your life, and also just kind of being wise about who are you listening to, whether it's online or in real life. So I think it's a great talk with Terri. And then the next part will be talking about reintegration after deployment, which I know we will continue to face as a community. Let me tell you more about Terri. So Terri Laurent spent 28 years as a military spouse following her husband around the world, and they spent their last 6 years in Japan. She embraced her role as a mentor when she realized she was becoming the oldest girl in the room. She's acted as an advisor for spouse groups, volunteered at Airmen and Family Readiness Centers, and taken on leadership roles in PWOC. In retirement, the same desire to pour into others has continued as she fosters multi-generational friendships in her church and community. Sharing the lessons she's learned from years of living with those who are in other stages of the journey is one of the greatest joys of her life. Terri and her husband Jim retired to Suffolk, Virginia, and became small business owners, starting First Light Photography, LLC. They have 2 grown children, Aaron and Cody. Roxy, their ambitious American bulldog, keeps life interesting. I've known Terri for a number of years, and I have been wanting to get her on to share some of her wisdom. So I hope you enjoy this. And just remember, part 2 will be released in the next episode or 2 where we talk about deployment reintegration. So on to the show. Thank you again so much for listening. Welcome, Terri. I'm so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Before we dive into this topic of mentoring and finding a mentor, I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell listeners a little bit about you and your family, like how long you've been married and your background in military life, et cetera.
Jim and I have been married for 30 years. We did the military thing in the Air Force for a full 30 years. I was with Jim for 28 of it, but I have 2 children. Aaron is 27 and Cody is 25. Both have served in the military. Cody was in the Air Force for 1 tour and Aaron has just started. So we are an all-in military family.
It's like a family business, when Steve retired, we were kind of like, felt so done. But then I was like, what, we're leaving our legacy with our oldest son.
I know. It's kind of cool.
Well, and did you ever think he'd be in for 30 years? I remember as we were coming up to the 20-year mark, a lot of people are like, that's the end. And then you go way past that. And
totally. I mean, I remember at the 10-year point going, should we keep going? Is this something we're going to do? And you think at that point, we're only going to go to 20. And then you hit 20, and as long as things are going well, we always said, as long as it's still fun, as long as we're still enjoying this, we'll go as far as the Air Force will let us. And 30 years was the point. So yeah, it was awesome. We would have kept going if we could have. And I think you guys might have too.
Yeah. And it was time to go. And I think last year it was the 70-somethingth birthday of the Air Force, or this year. And I don't think I had thought about how young of a service it was until I looked at my husband and said, you were there for almost half of its history.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. Yeah. Yes, you're like a legend. So it's Jim.
Yeah.
He's a living legend. Don't tell him I said that.
Well, what does that make us, Jen?
I don't know. Oh, that's too funny. Well, now, did you grow up in the military at all, or was this all new to you?
Not at all. This was all new to us. So yeah, I had no idea. And even as a young spouse, when he first went into the military, we were not married yet. And I think I was just so dumb. I didn't know. I had no idea what I was getting into. So a lot of times when I'm talking to young spouses and they look at me with that, deer in the headlights look of, I had no idea what I was getting into. You just don't. You don't know what you don't know. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And for people to say like, you knew what you were getting into. No, no, we did not. Well, and you guys lived all over the world.
We did.
Where all were you stationed?
So we started out in Virginia and ended up back here for retirement. But we started out at Langley, and then we went to Ohio, and we were in Ohio 5 years. We thought, oh, wow, we're just stuck kind of in the middle of, it's just middle America. We loved our time there, but both of our kids were born there. We were at Newark Air Force Base, which is a missile calibrating station that I think at the height of our time there were 50 military members.
Oh my goodness. Is it? And it's not open anymore, is it?
No, and it's not. Well, the calibrating station I think still is, but they privatized it.
Okay.
And so we stayed through the privatization, and that's what kind of kept us there 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And then when we left there, we went to Germany, which that was kind of the deal. If I remember it right, was if you'll stay, you'll kind of get first choice about when the next assignments come open. And so we went to Germany from there. We were in Germany almost 4 years, and that was a whole experience too, which we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about mentoring. And because that was when I really realized how much I needed the military family, because I thought we were going on this wild vacation. And the first 6 months of our time there, I was in probably a depression. I don't know that I realized it at the time, but wow, I couldn't believe how long it took to start feeling normal. Like this is my life.
I think so many of us have felt that too.
Yeah.
Especially with being young and being overseas.
But then we went to South Carolina, which brought us back closer to home because my family was all in Virginia Beach. We were there 5 years, and then we went to 5 was the big number in our lives. I don't know, because then we went to Hawaii. We were there actually. Were we in Hawaii 10 years?
Oh my gosh.
No, we were in Hawaii 5 years. We were in Hawaii 5 years, and then we went to Japan, and we were there 6 years.
Okay. Yeah, you had long assignments.
We did. Japan was kind of an odd thing because we had 3 consecutive assignments there. So we went from Okinawa up to Misawa and then finished up at Yokota at 5th Air Force and the headquarters there. So, that was really unusual. Most people don't stay there and go boom, boom, boom to 3 different assignments.
Kind of just island hopped.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool.
Do you have a favorite assignment, or are you kind of the mindset of they were all favorites?
They all had such, wonderful things about them. But if I had to pick a favorite, I don't know.
Yeah.
It would be a toss up. Well, no, because I loved them all. Europe was so cool.
Right.
After I got through oh my gosh, this isn't going to be an ongoing vacation. And I kind of figured out my life and figured out how to travel and how to get around. Would have gone back to Europe in a heartbeat. But Hawaii was awesome. We loved the beaches. I loved the weather. People complained about the no multiple seasons, but I grew up in Minnesota where the one season was winter. And so if I only had to have one season, I'd rather have summer than
me
winter.
too. I never had a problem with it. I'd go back now if it wasn't so far and expensive.
Exactly. So I loved Hawaii. I loved Japan way more than I thought I would. I had no desire to go to the Pacific. I don't know why, because we were already in Hawaii. I think Hawaii was my my preparation for Japan, because Hawaii has such a Japanese influence.
Yeah.
That by the time we got to Japan, I loved it. The Japanese people are so amazing, and I just had no idea that I would love it like I did.
Yeah. You mentioned, going to Germany and having that kind of be your wake-up call as needing community, it sounds like.
Yes, it was truly one of the most shocking experiences for me. Because again, managing expectations, I went with the expectation that I was going to Germany. This was going to be an ongoing vacation. It was going to be fabulous. We hit the ground. Jim went straight to work, and I went to an empty apartment with none of my stuff there yet, and two little kids who were 2 and 4 years old, and no idea how to do anything or get around, and didn't know how to make friends. Didn't know where do you meet these people? It was cold. It was fall.
And even just driving and trying to figure out that kind of normal daily stuff, and along with 2 little ones, it's daunting.
What saved me in that experience was somebody suggested going to a play group. Yeah. There was a kids play group that met over at the community center, and that is where I made my friends. And they're lifelong friends, people that I'm still in touch with. And we together figured out how to enjoy Europe, and how to have fun together, and how to go on trips together, and how to take care of each other's kids, and just do life together. Yeah. I mean,
you need each other so much when at an overseas.
Yeah, it was such an amazing experience that I tell young spouses all the time. Go to a play group, go to somewhere. I heard you talk about in one of your other podcasts that you met a friend at a dance group. Yeah. Your kids' dance classes. Wherever your kids are going, other moms are there too. And that's where you can make relationships that you're all in the same boat at the same time. And that is truly where you can find the people who are going to support you, and you can support them.
Yes. Because as you grow into it, you start to be that voice of experience too.
Yes.
Now, did you find mentors through that sort of thing, or did that kind of happen more naturally, or did you go to something organized, or how did that work out for you?
So while we were there, the interesting thing was our spouses group was combining. They thought it would be a great idea, or the commander spouse thought it would be a great, and again, Rhein-Main was kind of one of the smallest bases in Germany. We were in Frankfurt. We were not down at Ramstein. The commander's spouse there thought that it would be great if we combined them. And at that point in the military life, that was brand new. So there was a huge separation between officers and enlisted, certainly within the spouses.
And I don't know if you were like me coming into it as a new spouse. None of that meant anything to me anyway.
Oh, yeah. No.
It was like, I don't know what that means.
They were all just people.
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't understand that there was that big a separation. I didn't understand why. Yeah. And at our play group, there wasn't.
So because that was more informal. Yeah.
The commander's spouse, and I do not know why she would have done this, because I am somebody who does not like confrontation. I don't think of myself as certainly not at that point in my life, as a leader. And she asked me if I would consider being the president of their combined spouses group.
Oh, wow.
and
That's
their
not intimidating
board
at
was
all.
20 members, 20
Oh my
people
gosh.
that I had to go in and and I was maybe 30. So yeah, I don't know why I said yes, but I said yes. It's one of those things, doing it afraid.
Yes.
I was like, oh my goodness, no, no, no. But
were you looking behind you? Are you talking to me? Wait.
yeah, I know. So yeah, I got some great mentoring in that experience. In fact, one of the stories that I have from that is this she was a dentist's wife. I can't even remember her last name, but her first name was Meg. And she saw me kind of floundering. She saw me trying to please everybody, because that's the other problem I have, is major people pleaser. And so I'm trying to make everybody happy, and all these people, some pretty strong voices were telling me, different things we should do as a spouses group, and kind of a lot of chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know how to get it under control, because this was really probably my first experience in any kind of a leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
And the commander's wife was a mentor as well. But anyway, Meg said to me one day, I still remember sitting in her car, and she said, Terri, here's something you need to build into your responses. When somebody comes to you and they say, hey, we should do this. This is a great idea. You need to do it now. You can say, thank you for your input. I'll consider that and I'll get back to you. She said, you never have to make a decision right away. It's okay to tell somebody, thank you for your input. I'm hearing you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll decide later what to do. And she said, then you give yourself some time to decide, is this something I want to do? Because I constantly felt pushed.
Yeah. And like to make a decision right now, yes or no. I love that, because it doesn't have to be. It can just be, I'll think about it.
And that was life-changing experience and advice to me. I have thought of that so many times since, and I've shared that advice with other people, because it was monumental. That was a big mentoring moment for me. I was like, yes.
That is good.
And that was really organic. She was not my mentor. She just had a mentoring moment.
I don't know that I've ever had like what you would call a formal mentor. I think it's just been more people that have stepped into that role. And then kind of maybe during it, you realize, wow, this is really somebody I can look up to. But sometimes it's not until later on you look back and go, wow, that person really did shape my outlook. So it kind of sounds like that for you. Or I don't know. Have you had like a mentor be your, that they know they're your mentor and you know it?
No, I really haven't. But it's been interesting, because I think sometimes because you see the value of that, especially as you get older, that I have found that I have been a mentor more than I have been mentored. Mm-hmm. So most of the mentoring that I received was more like that, really organic, just kind of happened. And I learned from other people anything I, found valuable.
Yeah.
But then there were other times when I could see that somebody really was organically looking to me, asking me a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. And then, but kind of, I think sometimes younger people are afraid to ask somebody older, will you be my mentor? Or that feels really formal. It just feels kind of like too much. So I have often said, hey, would you like to get together more regularly and just talk about stuff?
Oh, that's so good.
And that's kind of how those things have been birthed. And they've been really good seasons of life. Sometimes it's real regimented, like let's meet every Monday. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's just every couple of weeks we get together for coffee and just ask, how are things going? And talk through things that are important to them.
I think that's so important. And I talked to you a little bit about this, but one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is friendships are so important. And we tend to gravitate towards people that are our same age, maybe in the same boat, but those may not be the people that are the best advice givers, if that makes sense, or even some of the really popular online blogs and stuff. And not to slam anybody, but maybe find out, if you're listening and you really like a writer, or you really like whatever content somebody's putting out, find out more about who that is and what their perspective is. What's their experience? Do they have the experience that they're even talking about? And you might be surprised to find out they don't. And so it's being wise about who you're listening to and who you're taking input from. So that was one reason I really wanted to have Terri on, because she's very modest, but she has done a lot with spouses. And I just think you have that voice of wisdom. You've been there and can speak to that. I think that's so great.
You are way too kind, Jen.
No, not at all. But I think it's amazing that you did do the mentoring and started to recognize, okay, as you grow and as you learn, you have something to pass on. And I just had this memory. I totally forgot about this when we were in DC. Now, this was a homeschool group I was in, and I had several gals that were asking me questions a lot. And so finally I just said, do you guys want to just, because there's a Starbucks on the base there, I was like, do you guys just want to meet every Friday morning? And it turned into, they called it mentoring mom.
Oh, that's
and it was totally informal, and it got so big, and people would bring their kids. And so then I was like, this is bigger than what I can really speak to. I'm just one person and I only have my experience. And so, we were all military spouses that happened to be homeschooling.
Right.
So there were a couple of other ladies that were about my age. We were all, early 40s or whatever. And I said, please come. Cause we need other perspectives, because it was a lot of moms that were just starting out and kind of anxious and had a lot of questions. So anyway, it doesn't have to be like through a spouses group or something super formal. If you see a need, or on the flip side, if you're young and you are wanting that input, I feel like a lot of us older spouses may hesitate because we don't want to be perceived as pushy. But a lot of times, if there's somebody that you admire, ask them if they'd be interested in getting together with you. I think that's really smart too.
And the other thing to manage expectations too is, if you get bold enough and you step out and ask somebody, and it's just for whatever reason not a great season for them, and they have to decline, really try not to get your feelings hurt or take it personally. Just understand that we're all at different places in life, and it just might not have been a good season for them. Don't let that stop you from looking for that, if that is what you want. Because I have had people say, well, I'm scared to ask anybody because what if they say no? And you really have to think that through and go, well, what if they say no? It's okay. And just keep looking for the next person.
They weren't the right fit. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and do you have the story about that? Great advice. Do you have any other stories about mentors in your life or being a mentor?
As a military spouse, there were times later in life when, you're in leadership positions, and things would come up, and it would be like, what do I do? So many of my mentors in those times were commander spouses. Whoever Jim was working for, their wife or husband, but in my case, it was always wives, were just really a wealth of information, because they too had walked this journey for a while. And I just remember having questions about what to do about sticky relational issues, and then being able to go to a commander spouse and say, what do you think I should do here? And I really was so blessed to have commanders' wives that were also my friends.
Yeah.
They really took me in as a friend. And I know that was true for you too.
Yeah, it's such a blessing.
And again, managing expectations for those women who may be in positions where you are looking for that from your commander spouse. It sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. And you do have to just kind of accept whatever life hands you. But if you're in a situation where that woman or husband becomes a good friend of yours, you are a fortunate person indeed, because that can be such a great mentorship relationship.
It can. And it's so nice to have somebody to kind of bounce things off and ask. When Steve was kind of first in his first leadership type position, we rolled into Germany and he was at the wing, and they were like, would you like to be an advisor to the spouses group? And I kind of went, what? And so thankfully that base, there was a wing and several numbered air forces. And I know this is like foreign language to other services, but there was a major command there. And so the spouse that was at the NAF, who was kind of my husband's counterpart, she'd been there a while. She, thank God, took me to the group, and kind of, we would sit in the car before every meeting, and she'd be like, okay, now this is happening. And because she was about to leave. So she was kind of giving me a crash course on what that role would be. Cause I was still raising kids, and, I had other things going on. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Surely they're not looking to me for advice.
Right.
Yes. And it is just funny because it's that voluntold thing, and not everybody chooses to do this, but I said yes, same kind of thing like you, like, I don't, and I even told them when I first walked in, it's like, I don't really know. This was a huge group that dealt with a lot of funds and like charities and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm just learning and I'm here. And so the commander spouse, I was just really anxious about it. And I'm talking to her about it. And she said, you know what my role is as an advisor, if you're ever in that role, was to be their cheerleader. Number one, she goes, I feel like that's my first thing. And number two, just make sure they're staying legal. And she goes, that's it.
Yeah.
And kind of like the advice you were given, it was so freeing. And I thought of that for the next 10 years that he was in, and I stepped into more and more of that sort of thing. This was not for me to force my opinion or taste or whatever. It was to just kind of be there as a support. And once I figured that out, that made life so much easier.
Well, yeah, because I think sometimes when we step into those roles, we think that they're actually asking us to run it. They're not.
No.
They don't really want you to, but they do want to have a cheerleader that tells them you guys are doing great, and to keep them legal, because they are dealing with lots of money, especially at the overseas assignments.
Yeah.
All
I think those are very different.
So much money. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like we kind of talked a lot about being a mentor, because I feel like that's fresh in our minds, because we both just came out of these long careers for our spouses. But I think looking back to being that young spouse and just kind of feeling lost and alone, if you're somewhere and you're not connecting, maybe you don't have a play group or something like that. How do you find, what would be your advice to a younger spouse in that situation where they're just not connecting and finding somebody to kind of look up to and help them in this military life that's so foreign?
Well, the one thing I would definitely say is you have to get out. You can't stay in your house and think that somehow it's all going to magically happen. You have to be in community with people somewhere. So you've got to find what moves you, what works for you. So for me, because of my faith, it's often a Bible study or a church group of some sort or a spouses group, but some gathering of people where you can meet somebody, and then you got to put yourself out there. I think so often people are waiting for the invitation, and my advice so much lately has been stretch yourself to be the inviter. I know that we have introverts and extroverts, and that's all valid and legitimate, but even an introvert can decide to find another person that they think they might be able to click with. You see something in them that there's a spark. If you just put yourself out there and do that coffee date, just start somewhere. One of my closest friends in Germany, I met at a Burger King, and the woman who was sitting in the booth behind me, our two little boys were kind of playing with each other over the booth. So we turned around and looked at each other and started talking. And she was not with the military. Her husband was a contractor with an engineering group over there. And so they did work with the military, but they lived on the economy. And I was just bold enough to step out and say, hey, do you want to exchange phone numbers? And we became friends, and it was the most fun friendship because she had an off-base experience I didn't have. She learned to speak more German than I did, and her kids were in German schools, and she actually ended up getting me a job. Her husband, the engineer, got me a job at the engineering firm editing engineering reports. They needed an English speaker, and I had an English degree, and it was this amazing job that I got to kind of do my own hours. And I don't know, it was so weird. Just putting myself out there opened up this world of opportunity that if I had not bothered to talk to her, I wouldn't have gained this great friend and a job opportunity. So I just say to young people, just put yourself out there. The worst that can happen is that nothing is going to happen, that it just won't go anywhere. And then you try again. But the best that could happen is that you might make a really good friend and then get out into community. And the more you're in community, the more you get to see more people where maybe you'll see somebody you admire or meet somebody that you think, I'd really like that person to be my mentor.
That's good.
But if you're sitting at home, it's never going to happen.
This is true. And I think in this age of social media, people feel like they're connected because they're on an online spouses group or something. And those can be a lifeline and a godsend. That's why I'm doing this podcast, is to reach out to people and in ways that I couldn't otherwise. But at some point you have to get out and go meet people face to face. Well, and it's funny to think back about being young, because I had grown up in the same town, and we first made our first move, which was to Ohio. I was kind of offended that people weren't inviting me to stuff. And I think how silly now. And I remember thinking, well, I'm the new person. Why aren't people
I'm the new person,
reaching out to me? And that is not how life works. It just isn't how life, like maybe it should. And I don't even know where I got that idea. Like, why are they should be inviting me. And, and it just wasn't happening. And very painful first 6 months, and like you even said about being in Germany and being depressed. I know that I went through that at multiple locations, because you'd come in and then it's, they your spouse goes off to work, they have a built-in life, and you've got to recreate yours all over again. And it's just kind of crickets.
Yes.
And
yeah. And wouldn't you say it takes a good 6 months to a year to really get that going?
Yeah. And then sometimes you only have 2 years at a station. So you've just got
you just got things rolling and it's time to go again.
Yes. Yes. But I think though, I do love your advice of getting out, and then also sometimes looking for the ways you can help other people will get you out of your own head and get you out of that misery, which isn't easy. I know that.
But that's just good life advice too, is that the best way that you can help yourself in a needy situation is to figure out how to help someone else. Because when you take your focus off of your problem, whatever it is, whether it's just friendlessness or loneliness or whatever, but you reach out towards someone else, it is life-giving to you and to them.
That's so true.
So
it's so true. Well, I appreciate your thoughts. And I think, if you're a spouse out there and you're not connected, take a look at some of this advice and see what you can implement in just getting yourself out there a little bit and making some connections. Just start with one. It doesn't have to be so scary as walking into a spouse's group. It can be something very simple, like saying hello to your neighbor,
or meeting that person
at the Burger King.
At the Burger King.
Saying hello to a stranger maybe you normally wouldn't. You see another young spouse at something, whether you're at the gym or you're at a play group, or, strike up a conversation. Because I think I saw something yesterday. This lady had a sign on her car, and it said, "I'm just learning how to drive a stick shift. Please be patient." And the person that posted about it thought they were very patient, and thought, okay, they're actually doing pretty good. They're not as bad as, I thought they would be, but they thought, how impatient would I be if I didn't see that sign? And I think sometimes if you take that and translate it to the people around you, if everybody had a little sign, like what they're going through, my husband just lost his job. My relative has cancer. We just moved here and I don't know a soul. How much more likely would we be to reach out if we could see that? And I think the lesson is to look around you and realize people are all going through different stuff, and they just may be desperate for someone to say hello or to reach out or smile. And you're sitting there thinking, well, why aren't they talking to me? And, you sometimes just have to be that person to make the first move.
I love it. Yeah.
So thank you, Terri, for your great thoughts. Did you have anything else to add about finding or being a mentor?
I just want to reiterate, just put yourself out there. Just take a risk. Jump.
I love that.
It'll be good.
It will be good. Sometimes, not always. Usually it will be good.
Usually.
Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to tune in for part 2 of my talk with Terri, where we're going to be discussing reintegration after deployment and keeping your marriage strong, and just some of her experiences with that. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram or Facebook. And just a reminder, I will be giving away copies of my book, You Are Not Alone. Have a great week.
Connect with Jen at jenmcdonald.net or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also purchase her book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Love the show? Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes. Until next time, have a great week.